Hello, it's 12 o'clock live in Warsaw. I'm Diana Skaya, and you're watching World News here on TVP World. European energy ministers from across the EU are meeting in Warsaw today for an informal summit focused on charting the continent's energy roadmap. Now, with Ukraine's energy minister present, securing Ukraine's winter energy needs is a key priority, alongside discussions on regional support for Moldova and long-term energy cooperation. Let's go now live to our correspondent, Sasha Farbach, who is there on site. Sasha, so what kind of decisions could we expect from this informal summit today?
Hi there, Diana. So as we reported earlier, this is an informal summit. So once again, this is something of a place where all these ministers, undersecretaries, energy secretaries are gathering to really take a pulse of where they stand with policy, to try and build that consensus, which matters for those formal summits. And the formal energy summit will be taking place in Brussels in June. But also, as you said, it's an important place of gathering, also not just from ministers across the bloc, but also we have, as you mentioned, the Minister of Energy from Ukraine, as well as from Moldova, and also an undersecretary here from the UK as well, and a representative from the International Energy Agency. So really to look at all of this collectively, how this works, also from Norway. So at her opening, the host here, the Energy Minister of Poland, when asking about why this matters for Poland, which areas are vital, speaking about energy security, especially about nuclear and threats potentially to the energy infrastructure, let's listen to her words from this morning.
When it comes to nuclear power projects being developed near the shores of the Baltic, but also wind farms, a new agreement currently being signed by the Baltic countries lays out the scope of joint efforts in this area, including broader monitoring. Internal affairs and defense ministers of respective countries, alongside their security services, are also involved in the process. We're going to be working extensively on these issues.
Also on the note of the minister, speaking of joint efforts, I mean, this was mirrored also later by the energy minister from Lithuania. His country there very much proudly stating that they have completely cut that dependence on Russian energy, and also calling for more protection. But where would this come from? Asking for more efficiency and optimization from the MFF, so that large-scale budget for the European Union. So he wants a budget line in there that makes sure that energy infrastructure is protected. Now also, remember that about a week ago we had this roadmap of weaning off from Russia completely across the bloc, all the 27 countries by the end of 2027. Now, the Energy Commissioner is here present, asking him directly also about a plan, potentially, hearing from Reuters recently in the last days, that the United States and Russia could make a plan to potentially continue delivering more Russian gas or energy into Europe. Let's hear what he's had to say about that.
We do not wish to import as much as one single molecule in the future. So for us, it's a very clear roadmap to end the dependency. And this is something that is independent of other talks that might go on. The European Union is very clear. We do not wish energy from Russia in the future. We don't wish it now, and we will not wish it after a peace.
About staying competitive, also about diversification and no return to Russia. That was also echoed later on by the energy minister from Germany as well. So although this is an informal gathering here, it really much shows that very strong message, that formal message, that there's no want nor need for any more Russian energy now or in the future. And that's the enduring message here. Even if there are no official statements, there'll be a press conference later on, and we're probably expecting some similar words in that direction. Dana? With that, back to you.
Very informative report. Thank you so much, Sasha Farbach. In his latest nightly address, Volodymyr Zelenskyy said he is ready for direct and substantive negotiations with Vladimir Putin in Turkey. Now, while the Kremlin is silent about whether Putin will attend the meeting, Zelenskyy reiterated that Ukraine always supports diplomacy and will be present in Ankara.
I am grateful to the President for his support. I confirmed to him Ukraine's readiness for direct and meaningful negotiations with Putin. Ukraine has always supported diplomacy. I am ready to be in Turkey. Unfortunately, the world has yet to receive a clear response from Russia regarding numerous ceasefire proposals. Russian attacks continue. Moscow remains silent all day on the proposal for a direct meeting. A very strange silence.
During a press conference ahead of Donald Trump's arrival to Turkey, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan highlighted the significance of the back-to-back negotiations over peace in Ukraine. The leader went on to say that a new window of opportunity has emerged to bring the war in Ukraine to an end.
Russia, Ukraine, the United States and European countries are in agreement on holding talks. As the only country that has earned the trust of all parties, we reiterated our readiness to contribute to these negotiations and our willingness to host them. With the latest contacts, we see that a new window of opportunity has opened. God willing, we believe this time the opportunity will not be wasted.
Staying on the matter, Donald Trump also expressed hope for a positive outcome to that upcoming meeting between Russia and Ukraine and Turkey. Let's listen into what he had to say about the situation.
I think you may have a good result out of the Thursday meeting in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine. And I believe the two leaders were going to be there. I was thinking about flying over. I don't know where I'm going to be on Thursday. I've got so many meetings. But I was thinking about actually flying over there. There's a possibility of it, I guess, if I think things can happen. But we got to get it done. We got to save 5,000 lives a week. 5,000 lives is really more than that. It's worse than that.
And amidst those ceasefire talks, well, Russia's attacks on Ukraine continue despite calls for a 30-day ceasefire from Ukraine and European allies, with Moscow targeting several regions with drones and guided bombs, marking a significant escalation after the May 12 deadline for an unconditional ceasefire expired.
In a series of Russian overnight strikes, Mykolaiv, Kirovohrad, Vinnytsia and Odessa were hit with drones, while the Sumy region in the northeast was targeted with guided bombs. The attacks followed a day of ongoing Russian assaults, and Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha reported multiple casualties, with 7 wounded in one drone strike. In response, the Kremlin rejected the ceasefire as an ultimatum, but invited Ukraine to sit down for direct talks in Istanbul later this week. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has accepted the invitation, agreeing to meet Putin on May 15th, although the Russian leader's attendance remains uncertain. Meanwhile, European countries have pledged to implement new sanctions against Russia's banking and energy sectors if the ceasefire is not honored. And a new round of sanctions is expected to be unveiled on May 14th. US President Donald Trump, however, has shifted his stance, now urging Ukraine to engage in peace talks with Putin and even suggesting he may join the discussions in Istanbul.
A significant new ruling from the United Nations has found Russia responsible for the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, which tragically killed all 298 people on board in 2014.
The UN's aviation agency, the International Civil Aviation Organization, has confirmed that Russia violated international air law by downing the passenger plane with a Russian-made missile over eastern Ukraine during the conflict between pro-Russian rebels and Ukrainian forces. The flight en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur was struck over the Donbas region, killing passengers from several countries, including 196 Dutch nationals. The agency's ruling follows a 2022 case brought by the Australian and Dutch governments, both of whom have praised the decision. Moreover, this ruling builds on previous legal actions, including a Dutch court sentencing in absentia 3 individuals linked to the downing to life in prison.
The European Union is preparing to use capital controls and tariffs against Russia in case Hungary vetoes the extension of the EU's economic sanctions against Moscow. The European Commission told member states' authorities that a major part of the sanctions could be moved onto a different legal basis to avoid Budapest blocking their adoption.
The move is a response to Viktor Orban's repeated threats that Hungary will veto the extension of economic restrictions on Russia, set to expire with the end of July. These apart from frozen Russian assets worth some €200 billion, include import bans and price caps on the energy sector. The legal workaround would only require a majority of EU countries for the sanctions to be extended and not a unanimous vote. The move is being prepared after the EU vowed to maintain economic pressure on Russia as it attempts to force the country into agreeing to a proposed ceasefire in Ukraine.
According to Rostislav Khotin from Radio Free Europe, Hungary has been blocking Ukraine's progress on joining the EU, and therefore the expectations are high in Kyiv that Budapest's vetoes can be bypassed.
The expectation in Ukraine was that during the Polish presidency in the European Union, which will last until the end of June. Ukraine will open at least 1 or 2, maybe 3 clusters for EU accession out of 6 clusters altogether. But Hungary has been blocking this, and Ukrainians hoped that Polish presidency will help them to open these clusters, first clusters. And so far, these hopes did not materialize because of Hungary vetoes. And Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orban is constantly putting obstacles on the Ukraine's EU integration. So the Hungarian problem is there, but the Brussels EU bureaucracy should think of a way how to avoid this Hungarian veto.
The presidential race in Romania is tightening. The most recent opinion poll from Atlas Intel shows the candidates, hard-right George Simion and the mayor of Bucharest, Nicu Șordan, can expect to gather 50% of the votes each in the runoff this coming Sunday.
The Atlas Intel opinion poll was published on the social media platform X by poll analysts Europe Elects. The sample size of the survey was almost 4,000 participants. An international market research and data intelligence company, Atlas Intel, provided the most precise estimates for the 2024 US presidential race. However, the most recent polls regarding the Romanian presidential election from other sources, such as Politico, do not paint an equally balanced picture, predicting the nationalist Simion is likely to receive 39% of the vote and the centrist Dan just 31%. The new polls follow Thursday's debate, the first featuring Simion. The candidates differ drastically also in their approach to aiding Ukraine. The far-right Simion favors neutrality, but he did allude to potentially blocking European decisions on providing aid, whereas Dan is a staunch supporter of continued support for Ukraine. Romanians will cast their ballots in the second round of the presidential election on Sunday.
And on that, we end this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching, and do stay tuned with us for more news, features, and commentary.